friends. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws Podcast with East Forest. I am the said latter, East Forest, and welcome to this episode. Today, I have a conversation with Kash Khan. What kind of great name is that? Sounds like it's like a movie name, Kash Khan. He's a pretty cool guy. He's out in Scotland, and he has started a sort of an organization that it's got a very large Facebook group, Educate, Inspire, Change. And he's just out there trying to do what he can. You know, he had his own awakening, and he wants to make the world a better place. And I was like, all right, let's get into what that means, the pitfalls and the discussions of that. And so I was grateful to be able to meet him. And, you know, for me personally, Facebook, all social media, but Facebook in particular, you know, it can be a tough ecosystem. The atmosphere is rough. There's some toxicity sometimes to the way people feel entitled to share their opinions or kind of shut people down, that kind of cancel idea that I've brushed up against myself on that platform. And look, this is a super small minority of people. But, you know, people who I would say we're on the same team, but they take umbrage with something that to me seems crazy. But regardless, it's enough that sort of toxic energy has made it so I've wanted to distance myself personally from my interaction on it, which is a bummer because there's so many wonderful folks out there. I'm sure many of you. So it's just I wrestle with that energy. And so when I wanted to talk to Kash, it's wow, you know, you're diving into that platform in such a big way. You know, millions of people essentially entering into conversation is the main aspect of I think the group or the organization. And it takes some chutzpah. It takes some clarity of vision. So we get into stuff like that, and I think you'll enjoy the conversation. Hey, got that track out called Voyager with DJ Anna. I don't know if you got a chance to hear that. That's on all streaming services. It's ambient, but Anna did the background analog synthesizer stuff, and I added the piano stuff, and we both kind of played around with mixing it. So that track is out now. I hope you're enjoying that. I'm down in Boulder, Utah, down in southern Utah. I came down here last week to start mixing this new record. I've been recording lots of strings. I worked with some members, the 208 Ensemble, who are three players, cello, viola, and violin, who play in the Boise Philharmonic. And then I recorded my friend Owen Hoffman-Smith and Thatcher Schmid out in Portland, Oregon, at the Map Room Studios, which is the same studio I did a lot of recording for the Ram Dass album. And so I've got all this string stuff I've been going through, and I want to start culling through it and mixing it. So it's very exciting for me because when that moment where an album starts to take shape and the sounds start to come together, but it's also been really hard. I mean, I've been working with the arranger, a friend of mine, Lorna Doone, as she goes, and so some of these string parts are pretty complex, and one of them had 50 tracks, and it took me 8 hours just to do an initial mix. So I've been in the studio about 10 hours every day down here, just me and my dog Kaya. I got her for a little while, and we've got a nice little schedule where we head down there. You know, we take our little break at 3:00 for her to have her food, and we go on a little walk, and then we keep working. So we're going to be heading out there soon, and I'm just really excited for the evolution of the music and where it's going, and looking forward to sharing it with you soon. So that is my next major record, but we have some releases before them, like the one you heard called Voyager with Anna. Thanks for reviewing the podcast. We've had a few more come in. We're at getting closer to the 200 mark of ratings on iTunes, and that'd be a huge milestone for me and for this show. So if you haven't done it or you want to do it again right now while we're talking, pop over, give the show 5 stars, and if you want to do a written review, that's awesome too. Really helps people take the leap to dive in and helps us get good guests. Okay, so let's dive into this conversation with Kash Khan. Cool. So where are you coming from right now?
UK, Scotland.
Scotland.
Yeah.
I was there a long time ago in another lifetime in a little town called Kirkcaldy. Kirkcaldy?
Kirkcaldy. Yeah, I know where you are.
Yeah. And I was, this,
They all speak a bit funny there.
yeah. And okay, here's a quick story about Kirkcaldy. This is like college, and I had some kind of internship or thing where I was with a British theater group, and I was supposed to be like working with them. And part of it went up there, and I was teaching like a theater class for high schoolers, and I had a list of all their names, and I'm supposed to like do a roll call, and I would say a name, and no one understood me.
Yeah.
And then eventually I said, well, why don't you guys say your name and I'll check it off. And it was the same thing. They said their names. I had no clue who was who. And so
funny.
eventually I was like, I guess we're all here. And
Yeah.
they thought I sounded like someone from the TV show Friends, which back then was a thing. But anyway.
It's all good, man. Yeah, they were very strange accents. They talk like, how do they talk? I'm from Kirkcaldy. Like very weird accent, you know?
It was thick. It was very thick. I probably couldn't pick out the differences of different Scottish accents, but that one felt like I was in the real Scotland. So
that's an issue I've had, you know, because I have such a large American audience, and with I'm Glaswegian, and from Glasgow we talk very, very fast, and we all automatically understand each other. So I'm getting used to talking to Americans, so I have to slow down and just kind of remember that I'm not talking to a Scottish person, you know. So it's kind of a good learning exercise for me.
Yeah, you do. I've seen a few videos, and I was like, this guy he has a lot of ideas coming out quickly. Yeah. So maybe I didn't. That's nice to know. It's a cultural background. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, this a good way to start for me and for listeners is if you could just give us a little bit of a summary about your background and the project you have going on, and then I'd like to take it from there, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. So I'm born and bred in Scotland. I was born into a Muslim family, although I stepped away from religion at a young age. But in my early 30s, I had a bit of a spiritual awakening. And it was through some adversity I faced in my life where I couldn't see my own son for a while. And it forced me to kind of look at myself and assess my life. And it was out of that I decided to create a platform called Educate, Inspire, Change. So this platform originally was just designed as a way for me to connect with my son, who I couldn't see, you know. I wanted him to see what I stood for. So I made a Facebook page called Educate Yourself, Inspire Others, Change the World. And it was just a hobby. It became a passion over a few months and a couple of years. And it kind of led me to where I am today. I'm deep in this spiritual journey, and I'm thankful to say that I've now built a big platform of over 3 million followers. And I was able to make a business out of my passion. And it's really sent me on a journey of self-discovery. And even now, I'm growing every day. I'm learning new things every day. And the future's quite bright for me now compared to where it was 8 years ago, you know. So that's kind of where I am now.
Okay. And part of that journey for you, at some point, plant medicine became, after this time where you couldn't see your son, when did that come in as work for yourself?
Yeah, so I created the page 8 years ago when I was 30 years old. I'm now 37, going on 38. And I only did plant medicine for the first time in March 2019. So only a year and a half ago. I jumped in the deep end. I did ayahuasca. It's the first psychedelic I ever done in my life, you know. So like I had no experience with DMT or mushrooms or LSD or anything. So this was the first taste of psychedelics for me, and it really blew my mind, as you would expect. But like it was the right time for me, you know. It called me almost. It was through my business, Educate, Inspire, Change. I was creating content, and I think Rhythmia, which is a life advancement center in Costa Rica, they serve ayahuasca. They liked my page and they contacted me. So it was kind of ironic that they reached out to me. I didn't look for ayahuasca; it almost found me, you know.
That's usually how it happens with people. They describe it that way. That. Yeah. It just comes into their lives. The invitations come from many different angles.
Exactly. And I remember the first time I heard about ayahuasca, I I didn't know about it. So my initial reaction was one of fear, I was like very hesitant to say yes, and I rejected the original invite. I just said to them, no, thank you, but I appreciate the offer. And then over the next few months, for some reason, I just kept hearing about ayahuasca, and I just kept hearing about DMT. It was like lots of synchronicities were happening. I started to follow Joe Rogan, Duncan Trussell. I started to hear about Terence McKenna, all these kind of people who practice. So, and I felt like this was a sign, So the more I learned about it, the more I got interested in it, and the more I realized that this is something I need to try. So about a year later, I emailed them back and asked them if the invite was still open. And thankfully, they said yes. So I gave myself about 6 months to prepare for my first journey. So this was in about October, I think, 2018. And I went in March 2019. So I had 6 months of preparation, learning about ayahuasca, understanding my intentions, the importance of diet, all this kind of stuff. So I really did my best to put my place in a good position to have the best possible journey.
Did you walk into it with a meditation practice?
To be honest, like I struggle with meditation. I always have. I have a very racy mind, But I did, since doing it the first time, I've started to practice meditation a lot more because I understood the importance of it. So my first time doing ayahuasca, I was literally tossed from one side of the room to the other. I was lost, and it made me realize the importance of breathing, the importance of being calm, the importance of trusting and surrendering. So my first experience was a very rude awakening, but I since returned to Rhythmia twice. So I think in total I've done 16 ayahuasca ceremonies in the space of like 12 months. So it was a very fast learning.
Wow.
So there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I've found that meditation or focusing, being able to focus your mind on one thing, and for me that's often the breath, and the breath itself is the fundamental key to the doorway into the psychedelic landscape in that space. And without it, I think I would feel very, very lost. And like you said, tossed around. And so if anyone's thinking about entering into that space, if I gave them one or two pieces of advice, the first one would be to learn a familiarity of that muscle of focusing your mind on your breath. Because when you're in that space, it's just like it's a muscle memory, and having that familiarity, it really could save you.
Yeah,
it really can. And I had an experience like that a few days ago, but maybe we'll get into that.
Sure.
Not with ayahuasca, but I want to ask you about this platform you have, Educate, Inspire, Change, because I don't know what the landscape is like in Scotland, but I would imagine the community who likes this page and interacts with it is global.
Correct.
And things are pretty hot here in the States with social change, Black Lives Matter movement, and a calling forth and an arms to people to step it up and to really speak to who they are, what they're going to do, what's going on, and particularly in the wellness industry. This is an interesting time where I think we're all being asked to sharpen the blade of what we're putting out in the world. And there's a tendency in the wellness world to be very broad, right? Or very generalized and meta. And not that those things they're not true, right? Like if you say something like it's all love, it's like, well, I agree with that. But then some people are triggered by that because they're like, and, what are we going to do? And something like Facebook in particular, I want to know, have you found that it's changed in the past months or certainly the past years, but even more recently, like the toxicity of the discourse has some of that, when you have 3 million people engaging with the page, I would imagine that's inevitable, that there's some people coming on that are just like trolling, and how do you deal with that? And how's this energy coming up for you lately on social media?
Yeah, good question. So with Educate, Inspire, Change, we have such a broad audience where you get people from all walks of life with many different views and opinions. So you can't please everybody. So, you can post Black Lives Matter, you're going to upset somebody. You can post All Lives Matter, you're going to upset somebody else. So the way I've chosen to navigate around this is I'm trying to post less controversial content and focus more on self-healing, because I've found that I was adding to the problem by writing articles about, for example, Donald Trump, or creating articles to do politics, or raising awareness on war in Iraq or Palestine, And although these things are very important, and it's important to be aware of what's going on in the world with current affairs, but what I realized was when I was reading through the comments and a lot of division, a lot of separation, a lot of emotions were riding high, and I felt like I was adding fuel to the fire, So I kind of combined with my plant medicine journey, I felt like what's better is if I can put out messages of positivity that are designed to encourage people to focus on their own healing. Because what I realized was it's going to be very, very hard for us to fix the world's problems. And all we're doing is almost adding fuel to the fire. So what we can do, though, is we can all focus on ourselves inwardly and try to heal ourselves. And as a result of that, people will be much better equipped to deal with the world around them. And long term, the world actually might change quicker that way. If everybody started to practice meditation or mindfulness, then we might not need to change the systems. The systems might change automatically from the inside. If people in positions of power or more and more people practice meditation, yoga, mindfulness, eating healthy, nutrition, all this kind of stuff, then hopefully in the coming generations, the children that are young now, when they grow up, they will be much better equipped to lead the world. Because right now, all our leaders, they didn't have mindfulness in their life when they were children. They didn't have these messages of truth regarding nutrition or yoga or meditation or even plant medicine. None of this was taught to them, or very few of them, Whereas now we're in a very fortunate position to have all this knowledge. We're inundated with knowledge about meditation, the benefits of yoga, the benefits of plant diets, plant medicine, healthy living. It's such a big part of life now. And so my focus is, I think if I can get these messages under enough people, then hopefully within a generation, when my kids are grown up, we won't have all these problems to deal with. They should hopefully fix themselves from the inside, So that's kind of been the direction I'm going in now, where I'm trying to focus more on healing modalities, plant medicine, talking about mindfulness, yoga, meditation, how to deal with stress, how to handle situations better, focusing on solutions more rather than problems. This is kind of where I'm going with Educate, Inspire, Change.
I've heard the author Graham Hancock say that a presidential candidate should have to do ayahuasca 12 times or something. It's like a personal initiation into the soul in order to be able to lead other souls. Or I've thought about if someone is a psychedelic therapist or counselor who hasn't entered into that space at a particular depth with the medicine they're administering, they're at a disadvantage. It's sort of like you have to know what you're asking people to enter into. But one of the problems, or I'm just saying this to have a conversation about what this is. I'm not necessarily criticizing you. Is the memes that are put out on social media? There's no you can put out anything, right? So when you think about this idea of educating people, it's hard to do in bite-sized amounts, but those are also very powerful in how they land in people's consciousness. And then on social media, it sort of feels like Facebook in particular is built on this ability for any information, anything, right? And that sort of seems to create more polarization. It seems to feed in some kind of part of our psychology that it creates more division. And what we need is inclusiveness and unity and common ground. And so it's interesting. It must be interesting that you're working inside a platform that is, in essence, creating division. But what you're trying to do is bring people together. And are people allowed to put what they want on the page, or how does that work? Are they just commenting, engaging in discourse?
Yeah, well, I have a Facebook page, which is the biggest platform. So I am in charge of all the content that gets put out on that page.
Right.
But we also have a group, which is a smaller part of that page. So you can join the group. And in that group, there are certain rules and guidelines, but people are allowed to post their own content, their own questions there, And that can often get quite heated. And there's always people reporting comments. There's always people reporting posts because they don't agree with it. So we just try to monitor it with admins, and with creating some very rough guidelines like, no hate speech. We try to limit political posts. We try to no curse words, all this kind of stuff. Just try to keep it friendly as possible. Because healthy debate is important, but unfortunately in social media, it's very hard to create a healthy debate, People just, they almost like they want to hear their opinion out of your mouth, They don't want to listen with the intent to learn. They want to listen because they want to hear their own opinion, So people have their own they project their own opinions onto people. And unfortunately, behind a computer and social media, people get even more bold, so that
Right.
you
There's
get,
this
yeah,
anonymousness, so to speak. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's just hard. It's very hard to manage and maintain. But what keeps me going is I feel like I've done much more good than bad in the last 8 years of my life, like the seeds of truth that I've planted, or the people that I've helped overcome depression, or the people that I've educated or learned or taught them about meditation or yoga, or pointed them in the direction of ayahuasca. That to me is invaluable, because if we can inspire one person, that person will then go on to inspire generations and generations of their family and friends. And it's really like a very positive message we're putting out, So like to me, that's the overriding thing that guides me, as I'm focusing on the positive that I'm doing, because not everyone's going to be perfect. We can't all run 100% pure platforms that are going to be nothing but truth and positivity. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to create bits of separation, sometimes, by mistake or not intentionally. It's almost inevitable. So I just focus on the good that I can do. And I think more this path of plant medicine, meditation, yoga, it gives me more sense of fulfillment, because I feel like as long as I'm guiding people in that direction, I'm good. I feel good. I sleep well at night. My conscience is clear, I just try to steer clear of these really controversial topics that might incite hatred and might cause people to become more depressed or more negative, because the world is it's full of negative media every day. You only have to turn on your TV and you'll see poverty, war, famine, rape, murder, prostitution. It's everywhere. So we have enough of that already, So what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to tell people that we're actually living in one of the best times ever, That if you think about it in terms of crime and health and knowledge and technology and all this stuff, people are living longer, people are living healthier, less child deaths. We're actually living in a very good time in comparison to history, this is a great time to be alive, and also a very important time to be alive, because what we do today, we have such a large population, and we have the internet as well, where something that me and you do can influence potentially millions of people in a positive way. No one ever had that power before, because no
Yeah.
one was able to. So it's a really beautiful time to be alive, and we have now what we do today will echo for hundreds of years across billions of people, which is why we're living in a very important time. I really believe that.
I agree it's an important time. And I would also agree that it is true that by a lot of measurements and numbers, we are living in a better world as far as like how long we live and the technology and medicines available to us. And that triggers a lot of people to hear that as well, because it is also true that for many people, they're more oppressed than they've ever been, or the systems are working against them more than they ever have. And these are simultaneous truths. And I think that's part of the social and cultural movements that are happening, is that it's like we don't want to get our eye off the ball of the change that is occurring, that has been occurring. It almost feels like a particular fuse was lit in 2008 when the financial collapse happened, and we almost went off the brink there. And Occupy Wall Street happened in the U.S. and other places too. And that's when we really we put our fingers in the dam and held it back. And I feel like we're now at another stage of that. And COVID really pushed it all right to the edge and brought a lot of the problems that we have in the world right to the surface, right in front of our faces. Yeah. And these are problems a lot of us have known about, but now they're just so obvious. Like here in the States, we're having, there's food shortages and people who never had these sorts of issues in their lives, and gaps in our social structures about how we care and support for one another, or our medical system, and so forth and so on, and economic disparities and racial disparities that have been brewing, at least in our country, or around the world, but here for hundreds, what the country was founded on. And these things need to be looked at, and no one has the answer on how that change is midwifed. Like the change is happening, but how do we actually help it? Versus how are we mollifying it not really happening? And I don't have the answer to that. I think about things like in South Africa, the sort of tribunals they'd have about truth and reconciliation, where it had a lot to do with listening and expressing, and versus just hanging someone, right? Versus just like we're going to kill them. And that was like, how do we heal trauma? Because that's essentially what's happening, is a large and personal process of trauma and grief.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's no doubt that all the systems that run the world just now are fundamentally flawed, because many of them are based on profit and making money, and they're not really based on a moral, sound ground. Like the prison system is a good example. In America, it's a lot of it's privately owned, and the more cells they have full, the more money they make. Which is just fundamentally flawed. And even the prison system itself, the whole concept behind it is flawed. It's proven, I believe, I can't cite specific scientific research, but it's proven that people become worse when they go to prison. They reoffend more.
Yes.
So
Yes.
why are yet we continue to do this? We treat prisoners like caged animals, and we expect them to come out healed, which is just totally irrational. The prison system, there's the education system, there's the health system, the political system. They're all fundamentally flawed. But the problem is that people go into these systems with very good intentions. Like I have friends who are educated that want to become politicians or doctors or lawyers. They go in with the intention to fix these systems, but once they're in, they become part of it, and it's almost impossible to fix from the inside, because the systems are just so massive, so huge. You have to work for many, many years diligently just to make a very, very small change in a small law, or whatever it might be. So for me personally, since doing plant medicine, I've made a decision in my life to try to be the change that I want to see in the world, So by my living what I preach, so I'm planning on moving to Costa Rica in the coming months to try to live more sustainably. I'm in a fortunate position where I can afford to make this move, and I have people around me to support me. But I'm just trying to be an example, so trying to grow my own food, live sustainably, trying to educate my kids in a more healthy way, trying to create a better environment for myself, and trying to show people systems that do work, because there are small communities dotted around the world, particularly in Costa Rica, funnily enough, where people are living sustainably, where they're growing their own communities, they have their own schools, they're growing their food in their local areas, there's very low crime, there's very low stress rates, low suicide rates. People are generally happier. People are generally healthier. So there are examples around the world in these blue zones, these pockets of the world where people are living quite harmoniously, And I think what we need to do is we need to learn from them and try to implement them as much as we can in our local areas, So it isn't an answer, but it's one solution,
Sure.
It's one way to show people how we can live.
Well, I definitely I could agree that the best way to teach is by living an example, more than anything you can say. I think Terrence McKenna, you mentioned him. He had a line about how do you be an advocate for psychedelic work, and he's like, by making your life so exemplary that other people are essentially like, what special sauce are you drinking? And you're like, oh. Funny you ask. Not that psychedelics are a panacea to change. They're not. They're just a very powerful tool that can show you things very, very quickly in a very, very powerful way. And then you have to go make whatever changes you choose to make in your life. It's always going to be something from the inside out that you have to essentially choose to do. And that's how change happens on larger scales. Is there's a motivating force that's large enough to have people to do it from the bottom up. But you brought up this idea of when sort of profit or capitalism, when it comes into the mechanism, how that can screw things up. And people go inside these systems with good intentions and they get sort of eaten up by the system itself. And this is happening to some degree in the psychedelic scene because very quickly, there's lots and lots of conferences popping up and books and all sorts of ways that it's becoming profitable. And there's a lot of interest in it, and there's a lot of hunger. That's it, And is that something that you're facing with your platform, or that you're thinking about or coming up against as a potentiality for the problems of when money comes into this psychedelic healing?
Actually, yeah, because the retreat that invited me first to do ayahuasca isn't your average retreat. It's quite a high-end, expensive retreat where most people couldn't afford, Mm-hmm. So, I remember going there for the first time and thinking this is like a 5-star luxury resort, And the people around me were all fairly wealthy, affluent people from nice backgrounds, And it made me think, is this the best place to do medicine? Is this the most authentic experience? But what I realized was, let's say I was to go on holiday somewhere else, like Vegas or wherever. I'd pay like a couple of $1,000s for a week in Vegas. So why shouldn't I pay that for here? So there's almost room for money in psychedelics as long as it's done with the right intentions. Why shouldn't a retreat make profit and grow and maybe franchise and maybe become bigger. I understand like it's been done for thousands and thousands of years in tribals and in tribal communities, where they've kept it very small and in tune with nature, which is great. But like I feel like with the world, we're adapting and moving very, very fast. The internet is booming, the world becoming much, much smaller, and it's almost inevitable that psychedelics are going to become a big part of society. They already are, yeah? So like this retreat, for example, in Costa Rica, it's called Rhythmia. So they facilitate to people that can afford to go to a nice fancy retreat in Costa Rica, that eat very well and they do yoga and meditation and have all these things. But like there's people that have went there that would never go anywhere else, you know? So that place serves its purpose, you know? And I believe that the experiences that people have had there have changed my life. It's changed other people's lives. So that made me think twice about money and psychedelics and should people make profit from ayahuasca, you know? And I did question this for quite some time, but I came to the conclusion that like it's going to happen whether we like it or not. So we can either fight it or we can try to work with it and help it. So I want to help Rhythmia become a place where integration is a big part of the ceremony, where they be as authentic as possible, because otherwise we're just resisting and we're going to make it worse. Do you understand? So
well, like, I think the idea would be that, like you said, it's if they're going to make a lot of money at it, how could that not corrupt them in the long term? I'm not saying there shouldn't be a place for rich people to do psychedelics. I think the argument is more, where's the relevancy for the people who don't have money? Like, how do we make that work relevant to people who can't pay for it? Yeah. And then to your point, how do they guard against themselves getting lost in the money?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, it's hard to say. I would say like, or these kind of retreats, obviously the people that are administering the medicine should play a big part in how the place is run. So you would like to hire people that have experience working with ayahuasca, whether it's shamans that have a lineage. And I would hope that those people would have a big say in how the place is run, you know, and the way people are introduced to the medicine, the respect they have to give to it, the intentions used around it, and also the integration, because we're dealing with a very powerful spiritual plant here that has a consciousness of its own, yeah? And I feel that the trust that people have, like when I've been to any ayahuasca retreat, there's an immense trust that we give to the shamans and the people facilitating that event, you know? Yeah. So I'm trusting them, and there's a feeling of trust amongst the people that are there together. And so far, I haven't, like, you're always going to get bad stories. You're always going to get people being corrupted by money, or people that are even using ayahuasca with bad intentions. You're always going to get a few bad apples, you know. But so far, on the whole, I've had like very, very positive experiences everywhere I've went, and so have the people that have been there with me, you know. So I'm just having faith in humanity and having faith in the people that are running these retreats. And you have to have faith, you know, because if you go in with a pessimistic idea and not so much trust, it will affect your journey and it will affect your experience, you know? So like I chose to trust where I was going. I chose to trust my instinct, my guts, and it served me right. I know some people that have had bad experiences, and on the whole, they tend to be people that are always questioning everything, you know? They're always wondering what's the background of the shaman, why are they doing this, why are they making money? And they tend to ruin their own experience, you know? Like it's important to do your research. It's important to take advice and to go places that have been recommended by people that you know and trust. But like we have to have an element of trust, I think, you know? So like the people at that retreat, they do make money, they do make profit, and I'm just kind of trusting that what they're doing is a good thing. They're helping humanity. They're taking in almost 100 people every week doing ayahuasca, you know? So that alone has to have some real good purpose in the planet. Those people that are leaving, like I left and I became a better person. I became a healthier person. My kids benefited, my friends benefited, my business benefited. So I'm just one example of thousands. So I'm just clinging on to that hope. You know, I'm an optimist though. So like I've always been an optimist, you know, so even I look for the good in people, even when they're doing bad, you know, I always try to look for the good.
Well, you're right that you have to trust, in the sense that you don't have a choice. Once you drink the medicine, you are now in a place of vulnerability with the person leading it that is, it is unbelievably vulnerable. And that's why I believe you have to bring in some discernment, because what I've witnessed in the stories I've heard is that this is a millennia-old medicine and practice that now is suddenly this influx of money and cash. You get some people who they are not, their intentions are a little not so clear. Like, and I've heard, you know, there's sexual abuse that can happen because you're in that vulnerable state. There's shamans that are drunks that are not maybe really walking their walk. There's a lot of that. And then there's people who are just amazing, and the integrity they have is crystal clear. So because it's in another country typically, or you're doing something very underground, it is really important that you're talking to people, hopefully who have firsthand accounts of working with these communities, because you are so vulnerable. You really are, especially as a woman, and going to a culture where that's also sort of different, and yeah. So it has changed though, because when people see opportunities, like, oh, I could charge these gringos a lot of money, and some people they'll just sign up, and I think I don't know a lot about Rhythmia. I've heard of it, but it sounds like they have a huge operation going. So I don't.
do, yeah.
It's a little different than some of the mom and pops, but there's these things have popped up, and for that community, like that's a crazy amount of money compared to like what's normally down there. And I would hope that it's supporting too, like people in their community, like they're hiring them to work there. But there's an imbalance there, right? Of like people coming from around the world who have all this money to a place that has very little money, and I think we all need the medicine in a way. Like we all need it in different ways. We're all human beings. We're all souls. And some people argue that, okay, we should be giving it then to the people who have the most power because we want to change them. And then I'm more of like sort of the soul level thinking like, well, we're all souls. And you might think it's more important to give it to like Donald Trump or Elon Musk or whoever. But I think in some way my heart tells me it's just as important to give it to anyone who is just a mother or father, and how it's going to make them potentially a better parent.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like obviously we're all going to have children and children's children. So if you do medicine, that's going to run through your lineage. They say when you heal, a shaman told me this, but he said to me, when you heal 7 generations before and 7 generations after. So like, who knows who your great-great-grandson's going to be, you know? He might be the next president or the next Elon Musk or whoever, you know? So, and that's goes for all of us. So the impact by me healing is going to affect my children and my children's children and so on, you know? So like, yeah, I agree with you. Like every single human is vitally important. We don't know how important we are each in the role for humanity, you know? Even like me giving one person some advice, we don't realize how important that little bit of advice could be, because who knows what that person's going to continue to do with their life, you know? So it brings me into another topic of mindful living, because this has been coming up a lot for me lately, you know, because if we talk about mindfulness with yoga, with meditation, or like mindful living, just in terms of conversation you're having with people, be mindful of how you're speaking, what kind of advice you're giving, what kind of support you're giving, mindful eating, just the cars you drive, the clothes you wear, the companies that you're using to buy goods from, all this kind of stuff, you know. And the more mindful you can be with everything that you do, then that's going to have a ripple effect on the world, you know. So I'm trying to promote this concept of mindful living. Just if you could just be mindful over everything, all your daily interactions, small things, you know, and it will all add up eventually into a very, very big thing, you know. And I think that to me is an important thing that I'm trying to get across to people during this time. And that came to me through the medicine, you know, just be mindful. Because I remember doing ayahuasca, and I kept saying to myself, be gentle, and I was kind of touching myself very softly, you know, because this was happening to me, and I was like, almost like I wasn't doing it, it was happening to me. I was just saying, be gentle, you know, give yourself love, because I realized that all my life I've been very hard on myself, you know, like even my self-talk, you know, I'll call myself names or be angry at myself for making mistakes or all these kind of things, and be guilty and be ashamed, all this kind of stuff, you know. So it's just about being gentle, being mindful, taking your time, thinking carefully through things. So this is like practice I'm kind of trying to introduce into my life. And I think even doing the medicine as well, like everything, be mindful, like do your research, take your time. There's no rush. Speak to as many people as you need to speak to, you know, and like feel really good about it before you do something. Because I think a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon where they're hearing about ayahuasca and they're Googling a retreat and they're going, you know, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, you can get rocked. There can be psychic damage for sure, psychological damage. Being mindful, in a sense, is also awakening to the knowledge of our interconnectedness to not just other people, but to the whole planet. And this idea of it's been encoded into maxims for forever, like the golden rule. The idea that, you know, what you're doing to others or other people or the planet is sort of, you're doing this to yourself. If you start to see that interconnectedness, and often people feel that as a felt experience in psychedelic states, and that's quite powerful because It allows you to make choices that aren't just about an isolated sense of self. And we are at a place in a polarization that's emerging more and more over the last years, where it is about people thinking of just themselves and getting, me and getting mine. And that is the exact opposite energy that will carry us through this change that you were saying, that the change that is happening, the transformation is happening on this planet that has to happen and is happening. And COVID's a part of it, and the economic collapse is a part of it. And it is hard and it is suffering, but that's how we're sloughing off the snake skin so something else can be there. And we each play that part. And it is fundamental. That is one of the first steps, is realizing through, if you want to call it mindfulness, the way that your actions matter, your choices matter.
But the last time I did ayahuasca, I was at a retreat in January, and I deliberately went to a much smaller retreat because I wanted to have a much more intimate kind of experience with ayahuasca, and less kind of frills and just more deep healing, And there was a shaman there. She was a German woman who had been practicing medicine for many years, and she was almost like a therapist as well, And she gave me really great support, but she gave me an added awareness, because when you're in the middle of an ayahuasca ceremony, often everything can be happening to you, and you're kind of, you become like a victim almost, or everything's happening to you. But she taught me to be aware of what was happening to me during ayahuasca. She taught me to become the observer, So when you can really observe yourself experiencing whatever you're experiencing, whether it's fear or anger or pain or sorrow, whatever those emotions are, instead of being in it, try to observe yourself and try to understand, why are you feeling this way? What's causing this? Because I realized that I was behaving in certain ways during ayahuasca ceremonies when I was at Rhythmia, for example. And these were defense mechanisms that I had built as a young child into myself to avoid dealing with pain and fear, So, and she made me aware of this. She goes, I see what you're doing, and you're distracting yourself from the source of your pain. So she gave me this ability to become aware of what I'm doing. So now what I try to do is, like you say, I try to observe and watch the way I'm living and watch my habits. And it's almost like raising your consciousness. So you're having a bird's eye view of your life, and you're looking around from a different perspective, and you start to understand, like, oh, that's why I lose my temper, or that's why I get angry, or that's why I snap too fast. And once you have that awareness, then you're able to make the changes necessary, because often we are too in it to understand why we're behaving the way we are, and we're too busy reacting on an emotional level, So, for example, I would always whistle and dance during ayahuasca, and I'd get up off my bed and I would dance around because the music would come through me. But I realized I was doing this because I was avoiding facing the pain, because I knew that if I sat in silence and kept my eyes closed, I would confront something that I didn't want to confront, So I'd find an excuse to go outside to smoke some mapacho or do anything to get away from that pain,
Yeah.
So this is like life. People are so distracted with everything. We buy cars, we watch movies, we buy clothes, we go drinking, we do everything we can
up
to
our
distract
phone. Yeah.
We want to distract ourselves, because as soon as we be quiet and sit with our own thoughts, we get scared, because that's when you realize what real life is, and that's when you come face to face with yourself. And not many people like what they see, and that's the sad truth.
Spirit speaks through stillness is something that I've said before, because I felt that myself. Or speaks through silence too. You have to give it room to speak, because it's speaking in a tender language, and one that is of the subtler rhythms around us. And so when we're have a cloud around us of electromagnetism and notifications and to-do lists and everything, which there's a time and a place for that, but it's you have to choose to make that space, and inside the medicine journey as well. Typically, I mean, when I went down to work with ayahuasca, I worked with a couple Peruvian shamans in the States for my first initiations in 2008. And super powerful, they were very traditional shamans. Eventually, my former wife and I, for our honeymoon, decided to go down to Peru to work with a shaman, because we basically got money from the wedding, like, let's use this to go down. And the guy who was organizing sort of the ceremonies in the States, he's like, I could take you, and there's some options on where we go. And I said, okay. And he said, option A is sort of, it's a little luxury. You're going to have screens on your windows. They'll make meals for you. It sounds like Rhythmia, but that sounds really nice. Maybe they had a pool. I don't know.
Yeah.
But option B is I take you to the guy who's quite old, and he's probably the teacher of a lot of these shamans. He's like the original shaman. and it's very bare bones. You'll be sleeping in a tombo on like some wood slats, and that's it. And we'll be eating like rice or plantains, and that's it. And you're in the jungle. And I was like, I want to do that because it sounds like I want to see how shamans were trained, and I want to just be a part of it for a dieta for a while. And we did that, and we went down there, and it took a long time to get there, and we were way out, and it was not enjoyable. Like, you know, I just had a bug net I brought, and we brought out these crappy mattresses we bought. We put them on like mules because there was nothing to sleep on. You just put the bug net over this rubbery, $20 mattress, and bugs, the whole thing, and the heat, and I lost 10 pounds, and like it was a challenging experience. And there are a lot of dichotomies we were facing being in the jungle, but people had like cell phones, it was like, how does this even work? And we're doing the medicine, I guess, how they have done it for a long time. And now there's a lot of these experiences that are catered towards Westerners that I'm not saying they're wrong. It's just maybe that's a way to make people feel comfortable with what's already a very challenging experience, like physically, ayahuasca. Yeah. It's a lot to face. And I found on higher doses of it, you might have your techniques for like how you get away from things, but eventually like there's nowhere to run. Yeah. And the steep suffering comes from trying to run, like not willing to be like, all right, I'm going to purge that thing out or like let that one thing go. And that's the lesson that maybe can translate to our lives somehow about letting some things go or giving in or trusting, because maybe there is nothing else to do really. And we're kidding ourselves with all these distractions that we're like, well, I essentially don't need to do that right now. Yeah. But there's a suffering that comes with that waiting.
Yeah. Big time.
What comes up for you when I say that? Did you face things like that in your journeys, or have you found that more importantly in your life now that you're not in the journey space, just how this manifests and being a human being?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I definitely have been doing a lot more work on myself since doing plant medicine, and I've been facing my own demons, facing my own fears, confronting some harsh truths, and trying to make changes in my life, and it's a painful process. Like, I remember one night on ayahuasca, this was, I think it was the first time I'd done ayahuasca, and it was the third night out of 4 nights, and I experienced what they later called an ego death. So I kept feeling like I was dying over and over again, and I lost all, like, understanding. Like, I forgot who I was. I forgot my name. I literally died. It was like I became awareness. So I went somewhere else, and I forgot who I was. I forgot my children. I forgot everything, and I was really scared, And then I would come back round, and I would remember, oh, it's okay. I'm on a bed. I'm in Costa Rica. I know where I am. But then all of a sudden, I would lose it again, and this cycle repeated for hours and hours, and it felt like forever, And it was really scary because I thought, am I ever going to escape this time loop? Am I ever going to get out of this? And I started to think that this time loop where I was real life. That's where I live now, and that this reality was a thing of the past. This was a really scary, traumatic evening for me. I was crying lots. I was scared. I was lost. And even when it ended, I was like, what's the point of that? All I do is feel really scared, and like I got really sad because I forgot my children were alive. And I felt like, how could I forget my own kids? I was annoyed with myself. But then the next day, I had to do a podcast, funnily enough, literally 4 hours later, and with the owner of the retreat. But I found myself talking to him in a way I never spoke before, because I felt like I came face to face with death and face to face with all this pain. I appreciated life more, and I was talking to him from the heart, and I was having a conversation on a real emotional, deep, truthful level like I've never done before in my life. And it was like a reset button had been pressed in me. So instead of living in my head, I had made a journey from my head to my heart, and it was a really painful journey, But like, when I was living from my heart, all I wanted to do was connect and feel love and be listened to, and to listen to him as well. I really felt the need to connect, Whereas before, often you're talking to somebody like the way we're talking, you're talking with the intent to have a good conversation and to sound really good and educated. There's no real good intention behind the conversation. But now when I talk to people like yourself, I really want to connect on a deeper level, in the hope that people who are listening are able to feel that kind of connection as well, and able to be inspired, because people can tell authenticity from non-authentic people, So I try to live as authentically as I can, and that came from the most painful night of my life, So ever since then, I things that make me scared, I go towards them. Like I really do crap myself every time I do ayahuasca. Like before I drink the cup, I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I
Literally,
here?
yeah.
Yeah, literally, and even during it, I'm like, not again. Why have I done this to myself? But I'm putting myself through this pain because it's hard work and it's growth, and this is what keeps me going. And I hope that this is what I'm trying to inspire other people that do what scares you, move outside your comfort zone, because this is where the growth really lives. So that's kind of hope that kind of answers your question a little bit, about the
Yeah.
pain. Yeah.
Well, I think about the change aspect of the name of Educate, Inspire, Change, and change comes from action, right? From
Yeah.
choices and right action. And what do you think about, you have these insights in yourself and you're transforming and looking at, you call them your demons and the things that are like your blockages and your habits. So how do we translate that into changes and right action in the world to start to address the problems, not just in our internal lives, but in our external lives, in our communities?
Mm. Like for me, that would mean daily practices. Like, so it's one thing being doing ayahuasca and having a powerful journey, but the integration and how you take those teachings and integrate them into your life is almost the most important part. So how are you going to live? How are you going to eat? How are you going to treat others? How are you going to look after your body? How are you going to treat yourself? So it's just about maintaining daily practices and living your truth. So don't lie to people, don't lie to yourself, be as honest as you can be, and like live mindfully. So for me, it was a case of doing this journey, coming back here. I mean, I still struggled. I remember coming back from ayahuasca and I felt the urge to drink alcohol. I don't know why, but I just felt the need to do something like that, like low vibrational. I think maybe it was because my surrounding was very low vibrational. Like my family wasn't happy. My girlfriend was being her in a bad relationship, unhealthy at the time. So there was all these people around me that were kind of depressed, and I couldn't express to them what I was trying to express. And I got angry, and my initial reaction was to drink alcohol or do something to get out of my mind. So like it's not easy, it's hard, and I had to really discipline myself to stop doing that and to treat myself with more care and to start to meditate more and do yoga and exercise and eat better. But it took time, it took months and months of discipline and practice to implement these changes, and only once I implemented these changes was I able to really feel the benefits of the medicine. Because anyone can do the medicine, but not everyone can then learn from it and put those
Right,
teachings
kind of
into
dieta.
practice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like you have to clear the space in your body and your life energetically for, again, spirit to speak and your work
Yeah,
to be continuing. I
exactly.
think though, this is all talking about like how we're making the changes in our lives and in ourselves. And what
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get at is like how that inevitably turns into a kind of service, like an external action that
Mm-hmm.
we're that giving outwardly
Yeah,
in to make the changes in our world. And I agree, it starts from that place of you have to
yeah,
find that balance in yourself so you
yeah,
can make good choices. You're not like coming out from a wounded place, because a lot of what we see sometimes in activism is coming from a wounded place.
mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of, I think you said this at the beginning, it's kind of like fire breeding fire in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that they're not talking about an issue that doesn't need to be illuminated. It's just, it's sort of like we can fight, and that which causes more fighting and then more fighting and more
Mm.
fighting, and that goes on forever.
Do you believe that people have a purpose? Like everyone has their own calling and their own purpose?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I wouldn't make it too simplistic, but yes, in a sense, like I believe we have destiny, but I also believe we have choice at the same time,
Yeah.
which is
So
a
like,
paradox.
yeah, exactly. But like, so when I went to do ayahuasca the second time, I returned after a few months, and I remember my intentions were to find my purpose. I wanted to understand why I was here. and
Yes.
it helped to give me. I had such really profound experiences that it showed me why I was here, and it was ironic because I was told I was here to change the world, and it was ironic that I have a business called Educate, Inspire, Change. So this was almost the birth of my own podcast because I thought I need to be a voice, I need to speak my truth. So I created my own podcast. I then decided I wanted to film my journeys because I felt like what inspired me the most in the past, and compelling films or compelling documentaries really planted seeds in my head that made me want to research and grow. So I thought if I can document these journeys, if I can try to show people what's out there through film so they can be inspired to do their own healing, So then I started to make my own documentaries. So and it cost me a lot of money. I'm still in the middle of this process, and the intention is not to make money from these documentaries. The intention is to create change. So what I did was I found my own purpose. I found my own calling. I thought, this is what satisfies me. This is what makes me feel like I'm serving my purpose, and it's in service to others. And I found that path, and I'm really grateful to have found it, because every day I wake up, thirsty to work. I wake up grateful to be alive, and I think a lot of that is because I feel like I'm living at my purpose, I'm living at my path. And I think this is an important thing for people, because so many people are born and they're raised in such a way where their purpose and their calling is kept away from them. They're told to get a job, to get married, to go to university, to get a degree, and they never find out why they're really here, Many people are meant to be great leaders. Other people are meant to be great healers. Other people are great communicators, but they never really understand or find out, because they're put into not small. If it was up to my father, I would have been a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just lucky. I had a bit of a rebellious nature where I wanted to go my own path. But most people don't, unfortunately. So I think for me, one of the things I like to express to people is do what you love. Find out what makes you really happy on the inside, and continue to do that, whether it's doing art, whether it's drawing or singing or helping others or building or writing, whatever it might be. Do what feels good to you, and then somewhere in there you'll find your passion and you'll find your purpose. And once you've found your purpose, I feel like then you can really be in service to others, because that's something I feel passionately about. Is like, I have family members that I feel are working in jobs that don't serve them very well, and I'm always encouraging them to, what do you enjoy doing? What do you love? What makes you happy? Why don't you do that in your spare time and try to turn that into your living or your way of life? And I think that's a really important thing, is just to try to, education for kids is where it should start, is encouraging children to find their passion and do what they love, and to be in service to others as well.
Yeah, and that's why we need to have systems that bring that equality of opportunity, because there are a lot of people who don't have the bandwidth, the time, or the money to do anything other than just subsistence living. And that's why that's a criticism, at least here in the States, about the wellness movement being largely for people who have money and are largely white, and a lot of men too. I mean, the yoga industry is more female. But we want to have people to have that ability to say, I believe kind of the words I use. It's like we all have unique gifts, and fulfilling your unique gifts is what I would say is going to lead you towards your quote unquote purpose. And that may not be something that's in the public sphere. Of course, it isn't. It's like it may be very private and personal to you, but that's part of your journey and your unique gifts. And my work I have a public side of it with like what I'm doing here and my music, but it also is mostly private and personal. Like the work I have to do here in the home with my partner and stepkids. It's like, that's some of the stuff I face the most that no one sees, but it is a lot of my work, and my growth is learning how to be in that space. And it feels as potent as like if I give a concert to a few thousand people. They're just very, spirit doesn't work on that linear scale.
Yeah, I did a. Have you done a boga?
I have not worked with a boga, but I'm familiar with that medicine. Yeah, I'm a bit afraid of that.
Yeah,
I don't have. I also don't have a particular purpose where I know it has a lot to do with addiction for a lot of people.
Yeah, so I felt called to iboga. Like when I was doing ayahuasca, I was told to do iboga. So
oh boy.
And then, funnily enough, someone from a retreat out of the blue randomly emailed me who happened to own an iboga retreat, and he invited me to come.
And so he's like, "It's in my room. It's right here. No problem. Let's do it." And there it is.
It's just crazy, like how I was told to do iboga, and then someone invites me to iboga. It's just crazy. So I had to go. Anyway, when I was doing iboga, one of the realizations I felt was like I was born Muslim, yeah, but then I moved away from religion. I didn't become quite atheist, but I was just vaguely spiritual, I believed in something, but I didn't know what to call it. But this iboga trip made me almost religious again in a different way. Like it made me see, feel, and understand a higher power, And what I realized was, in every single thing that exists, I mean, like all objects, all beings, animals, insects, humans, even the worst humans, even the best humans, this God energy, this what we call it, God or energy, exists in all of it. It's what makes everything exist, And so, like you mentioned, the smallest deed. Like even today, me and my son were in the garden, and there's a wee insect, and I'm teaching him to be kind to the insect, And instead of killing it by mistake or stamping on it, I'm telling him, let's do a wee prayer for the insect, and let's hope the insect is free and goes to insect heaven. We're just having a wee family joke, But even that small deed, to me, I saw God in that little insect, because I'm remembering what my experience was in Iboga. And I thought, this little insect could be God. Like, who are we? We don't know anything. God could be in all of us. So all these small things in life, like some people you might never know or never hear about, but they'll do small deeds in their day-to-day life. And those deeds will bring them closer to God than me and you can ever be, Like, no one knows. This is why it's so important, like you may say, to even concentrate on the smallest things in life. Like, you don't have to be a life changer or game changer or activist or go to protests or a lawyer or a doctor. You can just be a normal, humble guy who treats animals kindly. And that alone, in the spiritual grand scheme of things, could be just as important, if not more important, than somebody who's doing great things in a big scale. You know what I mean? So that gave this experience with Iboga gave me that appreciation for the small things, because I realized God is in everything and everywhere. And I remember as a child, I used to do something as a child, because when children are really innocent, we are living our true selves. And when I was a child, I used to always look for really old, unused, inanimate objects. And I used to feel like they were left out. Like, why is no one paying attention to that old teddy bear? It's been gathering dust for years. So as a child, my instinct would be to go to that teddy bear and give him some love, because no one ever looks at it. Or even something silly like a wee inanimate object anywhere, because I think no one's ever going to come here and look at that object. It's just a bit of trash, And it made me think, God, that's maybe I knew something as a child that I'm now learning as an adult, that we need to pay attention to all these small things.
That's probably true a lot. As kids, we know a lot more that we're just trying to relearn by taking layers off. Yeah. I mean, from an animistic view that all things are alive and all things are imbued with God, which I can vibe with that for sure. Yeah. That there's just no escape. There's no like other. It's all one thing, and so you're always inside it. You can't not be. That's where this idea comes from. Like, you can't be lost. But it also means like not just the small actions matter, which they matter, but all action matters. And like, it matters to like do your part to try and right the wrongs that you see around you, because it's all we're it, you, it, us, I am. So, it is complicated. It is. We're in a very complex, socially dynamic world. And so we have to navigate this space. That's why we have conversations and we try this, because we're all just trying to navigate something that's incredibly dynamic. It's constantly shifting and changing with billions of people and trillions of bits of life.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, like I watch the Joe Rogan podcast quite a lot. I don't know if you do as well, but like on that, I love the conversations he has when he talks to like scientists or like even Duncan Trussell or psychonauts, and they question life and they question reality and they talk about like, why are we here? And you can just go on for like ever talking about this, because it's just so complicated. Like,
because it's life? Infinite. Yes, I mean, you could go on forever. Literally, there's no answer. It's the mystery, and that's the thing. That's what art and poetry all is. We do it forever. That's what this dance is. Perhaps it's just the endless dance of the mystery, exploring the mystery. Yeah. But it's beautiful that for yourself, I can see it in your eyes, and I when folks dive in, particularly at ayahuasca for the first time, and they start to really go deep into that space, I always say like, okay, that's just no tattoos in the first 3 weeks after it. Like, don't tattoo ayahuasca across your chest, because you'll have all sorts of ideas. It's like, let it ground, and make sure, don't quit your job quite yet. Just wait a little bit. But I can see the fire and the spark in your eyes, and it's beautiful to see you on your own path.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it a lot. And just while we're on that subject, so like I mentioned, I'm making documentaries, yeah?
Yeah.
So I've created a documentary. It's called Pantera, which is Spanish for panther, obviously. But like, so I traveled to 3 different retreats last year, and I took a cameraman with me, and we documented the journeys, and it was almost like we learning as we go. I've never made a film in my life before, so I didn't know what to do. Even the cameraman was fairly inexperienced, but it seems to have evolved and got bigger and bigger. And my and then we now attracted the attention of a director, who's quite a good filmmaker, and he loved what we're doing. He likes educate, inspire, change. So he's now came on board. So we're going to continue this Pantera documentary series. So we're just going to be going to different retreats, doing different healing modalities like Iboga or Ayahuasca, Kambo, or it might even just be a yoga retreat. So we're going to be filming all these different retreats and trying to show people different ways to heal, So like you mentioned, people who are doing ayahuasca for the first time, they might not know where to go. So we're trying to create films that will show people the benefits, advantages and disadvantages of different kinds of medicines and different kinds of retreats, to try to help to educate people and to show them, me, because I'll be making mistakes as I go as well, I'm sure, I'm kind of trying to be in the front line and doing this. So I'm really excited because we just released the trailer a couple of days ago, and I'm hoping to release the full episode 1 of the documentary, which happened to be the first time I took my girlfriend, now fiance, to an ayahuasca retreat. So we documented both of us doing ayahuasca for the first time together, and it was really great to capture that on camera for us to watch back with our kids. It's really beautiful. So
yeah.
I'm looking forward to being able to release this, and it'll be the first time I'm putting my face out really on a public level. For the last 8 years, I've been hiding behind a computer screen, but for the last 6 months, I've created this podcast. I've only done 11 episodes, so I'm still very, very young in the podcast world. But the podcast and the documentaries, I'm starting to put myself out there on the front line, and kind of, so it's an exciting and scary time.
Well, maybe we can link to, in the show notes, the trailer and what else, how else can people connect with this world? I assume one of them is just Educate, Inspire, Change on Facebook.
Yeah, sure. So obviously,
check it out.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Educate, Inspire, Change. We have Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. We're on all major platforms. And our podcast is also on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify. And the documentary is called Pantera. And there's a website, pantera.film, where people can leave their email and then they'll be notified whenever the documentary is released. And it's going to be an ongoing documentary series. So there'll be many more episodes to come in the future, So looking forward to releasing them as well.
Cool, man. Well, thanks, Kash, so much for taking a little time from across the world.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, it's great to be able to connect over the digital sphere.
It's been beautiful. It's been an epic conversation, and I'm hoping that we can stay connected, brother.
Of course. Thanks. Thanks, Kash, for coming on the show. Thanks for the conversation. Stay well out there, halfway across the world in these COVIDian times. This song that you're hearing in the background is called Highway 1, and it is off the album Orbits, which was sort of a remix album that I did for a dance company, the AWOL dance company in Portland. And so Highway 1 is sort of a redo remix of the song Pacific Coast Highway off The Education of the Individual Soul. So you can hear either version wherever you listen to music or at eastforest.org. We sent out a newsletter last week, I believe, and if you didn't get that, you should definitely get on the East Forest newsletter, because I don't send them that often, but they're often things that are worth hearing about, and that's kind of the primary way besides Instagram or social media, Facebook. So sign up at eastforest.org. Other than that, thanks again to Educate, Inspire, Change. Welcome to all those new listeners, and you guys keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do, do it with grace.